it's been said about this chapter that it's all about fear, and structurally this is quite an interesting place, or part of the book, because we are, I mean, in my copy we're on sort of about page 115, so we're pretty much right in the middle of the book, which does go up to chapter 12. So I'll talk in another video about structure and Freytag's pyramid, but it should be building up and up and up now in tension, ready for a big moment. So what can we talk about? Well, to begin with, the parachutist, of course, is a very important symbol, a reminder to the reader, if not the children on the island, that although they are so desperate to escape from the island, the world that they are going to be escaping to and want to go back to is ravaged by war. So it's interesting, isn't it? We're looking at the sort of degradation, the devolution, the sort of innate evil in mankind as evidenced on the island, with these boys who, without rules and regulations, just become worse and worse and end up, spoiler alert, but killing each other. And yet we feel like, they need to get off the island, they need to get back to society. But the parachutist, of course, is a dead soldier, is a reminder to us that the society that they want to return to is, in fact, fatally flawed itself. In many ways, what's going on the island is just a magnification or a microcosm of what's going on in the whole world. The boys don't seem to notice it, but it's there for us as the reader to note. And Golding is, being a bit ironic here, saying, look, we can criticize what the boys are doing, but actually that's what the whole world is doing. Language use is also interesting. Jack really comes forth as a dictator in this part of the book. There are different analyses of the characters as different types of leader. Jack is seen as a dictator. Now, a dictator is a ruler who has total power, often obtained through force, and is basically the absolute authority. What I say goes, and I'll use force and violence to back that up if you're not going to do what I say. And it's interesting here because Jack at this point basically says, let's all go and chase, all the big kids, let's go and hunt the beast. But what he's going to be doing is leaving the little ones alone and vulnerable and scared. But he doesn't care about that. And that's very much what a dictator is about. If I think this is what we should do, let's do it. It doesn't care what the effect is on anybody. It doesn't care what anybody else's opinion. Whereas in the early stages, Ralph might have tried to be more of a democratic leader, blowing the conch and kind of getting everyone's joint opinion and sort of a sort of cooperative feel. Jack doesn't care. He's a real dictator. And as I said, a future video may be on the different types of leadership these characters represent. But obviously, it's not the best decision, is it? If some little kids come to you really scared, you don't say, right, you stay here in the dark on your own on this deserted island and we'll go off and sort it out. Somebody's got to stay with them. And then finally, the language in this chapter, again, is very interesting. The way that Ralph speaks in very short sentences. I'm chief, I'll go, don't argue. And as I've talked about throughout this video series, and do have a look at the whole series, the language of the boys is becoming more and more primitive and basic, very short and less eloquent, and words like Sam and Eric become Sam and Eric and become Sam and Eric. It's almost like the devolution, the reversal of the language acquisition skills that we basically take on in civilized life. If you think about it, as a baby you can't talk, and then you learn a few words, and then by the end of it you can talk eloquently as an adult, and they're going backwards. It shows that they're regressing back to that primitive, animalistic, almost caveman sort of vibe going on. I'm chief, I'll go, don't argue. And again, it's this whole theme about the fact that without rules and regulations and people to enforce them, the children on the island, as a symbol of all of humanity, revert back to this innate evil, this uncivilized way of life, which ultimately is going to cause all sorts of death and destruction. So it's an interesting chapter. It's very good that there are things in there for the reader to pick out that the characters themselves don't pick out. This idea that we as the reader can think, oh yeah, that's a soldier. Just like at the end when with the Navy guy, you think, oh, they've rescued them from this war on the island, and then you think, well, they haven't really, have they? Because look who's picking you up. Essentially, somebody who's also involved in the war. So where are you going? You're escaping from the frying pan into the fire. So it's very important to realise Golding is not saying this is what children would be like if they're on an island. He's saying this is what all of mankind is like, and it's just sort of amplified and accelerated when they're placed on this deserted island.